Hey everybody, welcome back to the 90th episode of Taps and Patience. I am AJ with Audacity Micro, here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. Hi Harrison, how's life in the US?
Still adjusting to the time zones a little bit.
I totally forgot about jet lag, but that is very much a thing.
We got back on Wednesday pretty late. I got to bed probably after 11 o'clock on Wednesday. And then I worked Thursday and Friday, and I didn't feel any jet lag on Thursday or Friday. But on Saturday, when I woke up and started walking around, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think I was just wound up because the shop was pretty busy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Saturday was my day to actually relax, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm still recovering from that, but I'm pretty wound up again. So it's probably going to be the weekend when I crash again. So anyways, what's been going on in your world since I've been gone?
So for the last, over the weekend and a day on either side, I took a family trip with the extended family on my wife's side. So I was gone for about 5 days with that as well. Then I got back and I was like, yes, it's time to get machining done. I had all my cam done. I was ready to start making parts. And I went and I warmed up my machine and it hit 40K and went which is the sound that it makes when the belt snaps.
Oh no.
Which ever since I've had this machine, I've broken about 1 1/4. And so I kind of knew this one was due to break, but I didn't have a spare on hand.
Is that pretty common with those machines that they break that frequently?
I don't think they break quite as frequently on other machines as mine is, but the office mills are notorious for just eating belts.
Interesting.
I don't know if the higher RPM ones are worse, but for me, it always breaks during the warm-up cycle when it goes from, I think it's 20 to 30K, which is the biggest jump in the warm-up cycle. Because it goes 10K, 15, 20, 30, 35, 40 for some reason.
Sounds like you need to fix up your warm-up program.
I was just thinking about that today. Yeah, I might do it in a whole bunch of 2,000 RPM intervals or something like that.
So what happens if you were to stop from a dead stop and go to 40? Is it different? Is it not as hard on it?
I would think it would be harder.
Interesting.
Maybe
is it
maybe it's more likely to break in the warm-up cycle because the belt is cold. It's been sitting for a day, so it's kind of taken up a shape that it likes, and it's not warm and flexy yet. So it's it seems to always be during the warm-up cycle where it breaks. I've never broken it during a program, and especially during a cut.
Yeah. So maybe you just need to either for sure add in that extra 5,000 in between that you're missing. But maybe even go one step further and have your lower RPMs go a little bit longer.
That's a good idea. Do start at 5K or something instead of going straight to 10K.
Yeah.
And let it run for a while. Yeah. And even adding an extra 5 minutes to the warm-up wouldn't be a big deal. So
I actually just got done editing all of our warm-up programs on our machines. And you might do this because it's what I did was, it's a simple fix, but it's really nice. I changed all my P variables to be a macro variable. And then I have one variable that I change at the top. And I have notes in there or comments that say, change this for a 5-minute warm up, change this for a 10, 15, 20. And so basically if the machine sits for several hours and I want to do a quick 5-minute or 1-minute warm up or something, I can load that program, change one variable, and then have it cycle through everything. And I did that on the mill and on the lathe.
That would be nice. Even just having 2 versions of it, having a 5-minute version for if it's been sitting for a couple hours, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. So it's simple. And I put it in macro variable number 1 because it's just a local variable that gets overrode anytime you do a new program. So Um,
I have replaced that belt a good number of times. I don't know. I've been through probably 3 or 4 at this point. But man, I don't know what it was today, but I had the hardest time getting that stupid sucker on the motor pulley. That's where I was struggling. To There's just like not much room to work, and the belt that I got was different than all the other ones I've had. I think the other ones have been a little bit stiffer, and this one was just a tad more flexible. But because it was flexible, I couldn't like use the stiffness of the belt to hook it behind the pulley in the back as much. And it literally took me like 4 hours to replace the belt today, where normally it's like a 35-minute operation.
so to loosen the belt, do you loosen the motor or is there an
Yeah.
idler pulley?
Nope, no idler. You just scoot the motor forwards.
Oh, okay.
But man, it took me forever.
Yeah. And you ordered extra belts this time.
I ordered an extra belt this time.
So
So
I would probably keep at least 2 on hand at any given time.
it's probably a good idea. But shout out to CNC Repairman for stocking these old office mill belts and providing next day shipping for them.
Yeah.
So I think it was delivered in less than 16 hours.
Nice.
So I paid for it, but it was nice.
So anything else going on over there since?
So this is a small thing, but it makes me very angry. I broke one of my monitors on my computer for a dumb reason, and I saw it coming, and I didn't fix the thing that I was doing that was stupid, and it played out exactly like I was envisioning it, and now I have a broken monitor.
Oh no.
So I rearranged my desk. The video viewers may know that may notice I have a different backdrop now. I did that for a number of reasons. The number one reason actually being the backdrop is because I've been doing more video production and I have some video scheduled for other people. My old backdrop was just super ugly and it was getting really annoying to like crop in on the green screen. So I rearranged my desk. But as part of that rearranging the desk, it kind of snowballed into like this whole me kind of redoing my room or my office here. And one of the things I've been sitting on forever is this in-desk charger. It's like kind of something that you would see in the middle of like a table at a university. It's got wireless charging. It's got some USB ports. It's got some USB-C ports. And I bought it like 6 months ago to put in my desk, and I just hadn't gotten around to installing it. And it takes a big old like a 3 1/4 inch hole saw, to drill a hole through my desk. And my monitor was kind of close to me in the drill, and I was going, man, if this hole saw catches, I'm just gonna punch the monitor. And sure enough, the hole saw caught, and I punched the monitor, and half of it immediately turned off. And then I, as all self-respecting machinists would do, I kind of gave it a good smack, and then the whole monitor just turned off forever. And no amount of smacking would get it to turn back on. So I ordered a new monitor. I forgot how painful it is to work on one monitor, but
that is annoying.
Yeah, the thing that annoys me the most is I was sitting there looking at it going, this is a bad idea. This could cause a problem. But I didn't listen to my little inner voice and learn my lesson.
Yeah. Speaking of things breaking, I was running some parts today in 4140 steel. And I broke a lot of end mills. And it was driving me up a wall as to why I was breaking all these end mills. So I think it was a 2-part problem. I think it was I had them pulling out of the ER collets some. And then the other thing is I was using the 5-axis, and there's something that happened that I'll get into a little bit later. But basically, I learned that the jaws that we have on our vise, they're serrated, but they don't dig into hardened steel very well. And so I had a lot of part lift. So I had either either my tool was pulling out or my part was lifting up. And anyways, I broke like 4 end mills today. And at one point I was away from the machine and it errored out. Like it was just like there was just like this noise and then it errored out, and I came over and I checked everything out and I looked at my tool and I was like, well, it looks fine. And I like looked at all the bottoms of the flutes and I'm like, they all look fine. And it was giving me this tool imbalance warning. And I was like, that's weird. And so I ran it up and down through the RPMs. I pulled the tool holder out and I cleaned the taper, and I stuck a tool up and I cleaned the taper inside. And, and then I ran it up through the RPMs again, and I restarted in the middle of my program. And so it came down and it walked around, and as soon as it got to the material, it touched the material and tool imbalance warning went off again. And so it did this 3 or 4 times, and I was like, what is going on? And so eventually I turned my feeds and speeds down. I turned my my spindle and my feed rate down to 50% and sent it, and it started cutting. It sounded a little different because of the change of RPM, but it was cutting and there was no imbalance problems. So I was like, okay, whatever. So I let it run. And when the part gets done, I come back and I look it over, and its finishes look, they're not bad, but they aren't great either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, what is going on? So I pull up that tool again and I look it over, and I'm like, man, all of the cutting edges look fine. And I'm rotating it around, and I look at it and I go, wait, this used to be a 5 flute. Now it's a 4 flute.
Yeah.
So basically one flute sheared off, and it sheared up quite a way, and it sheared off at the like where it lined up. So just rotating around, I didn't notice that it was missing. And so basically it cut the whole part with 4 flutes instead of 5. So
it's a variable flute.
Yeah.
Or a variable tooth, I suppose that is.
Yeah. So anyways, that was, and by the time I'd figured that out, I had one more op left. They were a part for a friend. It's going to be beaten with a hammer. He doesn't care about surface finish or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so I just ran everything at 50% and kept that tool in there. And I'm just like, I've already replaced 4 tools on this job. Like, I'm going to replace this before I run anyone else's parts, but that's the last one. And I don't want to replace it and then have something else go wrong. So if it snaps in the middle, I'll replace it and finish it out. But I know it's working at 50%, so I'll just leave it. So
I just ran it. I just had a really big tooling order show up today. So a little bit of background for listeners. I have been doing a lot of jobs and not getting paid for them for the last couple of weeks. Just normal cash flow stuff. Like nobody was late on payments or anything. It was just, the pay comes after shipping kind of thing. And I had broken a lot of tools actually on a different 4140 job, like a week or 2 ago. And I just had like a bunch that I needed replaced. And I had been waiting for money to come in for so long, and money came in and it was like, I need to get caught up on all of this ordering. So I had probably 50 tools show up today. It's very nice to be like, oh, look, my tool cabinet's full again. I don't have to worry about like that one tool breaking and screwing me over.
So do you keep track of your tool life?
No, I don't know how I would. Like, I know how I could do it mechanically, but like, I don't know. Like, it wouldn't mean anything because all of my stuff is so different.
Yeah, but does yours not have like a tool life management or tool life monitoring on it?
It does.
Because
I found that out.
You just have to go, at least on my machine, you just have to go through and you can find that tool, see how many hours it's run in the cut, and then just zero it out anytime you change it out. So I've started keeping a booklet or a sheet of paper, and I'm trying to track my tool life and all my tools. And right now I'm averaging, and I know it can be better, but machining stainless and steel, my tooling is lasting in the 5 to 10 hour range. And so I think some of that is going to be how I'm running the tools. Some of that's going to be the fact that everything's been so far been in an ER collet, and it's Haas tooling. most of the stuff that we're using. So I'm trying to track some of that stuff because we are switching over to Kennametal more and more, and some Kennametal, some Helical, some Harvey. Well, Harvey's, it doesn't matter what I do. Harvey's so much of their stuff is specialized. That's pretty much the only place I can get it. But I would like to look into some other brands and start trying some things out. And, then the question becomes, for automation, if we start doing automation, I'm definitely going to want to have very consistent tool life. But for job shop stuff, if I can get 10 hours or 5 hours in the cut with a Haas tool that costs me, $20, but I can get 30 hours using a Helical or a Kennametal or something like that, but it costs me 10 times the amount of money, is that worth it? Definitely if we do automation, and if I'm going to have stuff going overnight, at 100% is. But if I'm standing in front of the machine every day, is it? Or, hey, maybe I'm only getting 5 hours in the cut now, but if I adjust my feeds and speeds, I can see on average I've gained 10% more life or something. So I'm starting to dabble in that area because I know it's, with the growth rate of the company, I'm going to need to have some history and some understanding of what affects tool life.
I guess, so one of the reasons why I haven't been tracking it is because I have been making the assumption that it wouldn't be consistent because the materials that I'm cutting vary so wildly. And, in a single day, I may have the same tool cut like mild steel, then stainless steel, then titanium. But maybe, I don't know, does that matter for tool life? Is that...
It definitely affects it. But what I want to know more than anything is, even if it affects it drastically, let's say, one tool lasts me 5 hours, the next tool lasts me 15 hours, and it's purely because of the different materials I'm cutting with that tool. I still would like to know how often on average I'm changing it so I can factor that into my hourly rate. So I can know on average this tool is costing me, I'm having to replace it, let's say, on average of every 7 hours. And so I could take that price and I could divide it out and I could go, okay, if the tool costs me $50 and it runs for 7 hours or whatever, then, maybe it's $8 an hour or something to run it. Am I factoring that into my cost of my hourly rate? And so I'm trying to start figuring out some of that stuff a little bit better.
That makes sense.
And so my aluminum tooling, I know, just lasts forever. But to put things in perspective, my chamfer tool from Haas, that's a 4-flute, I used to go through those like crazy. They did not last very long at all. Well, I've started figuring some things out, and I think my current chamfer tool is up to almost 20 hours, but without being changed out. And so now I'm at the point where if it keeps going and I don't having problems, I'm going to start speeding it up and pushing it harder to try to get more time out of that tool, to speed up my programs, because I know that tool, I'm not pushing it hard enough. And so it helps me on both ends. I can look at the tools and go, this tool's never, ever, ever breaking. Maybe I can push it a little bit harder. Or on the other end, I have a tool I've been using, and I've had it last 30 minutes. I've had it last an hour. I've had it last an hour and a half, and I've had it last 3 hours. And so I'm trying to get it to trend up and get it into the higher count by adjusting things over time. So, and we've been pretty successful. And then it really makes things like today. Of course, if you break floor tools on a job, that's going to stand out no matter what. But at the same time, it was a very weird to have that many tools break that fast. And honestly, the material was pretty questionable as well. We ordered a bar of material and it came in saw cut on 4 sides.
I had that same thing happen with 4140.
Yeah, and the thing is it was like a 6-foot bar.
Yeah.
But it was like saw cut along the full length.
Where'd you buy it?
Weston bought it. I have no idea where he got it.
Because I got some McMaster 4140, and it came the same way. It was saw cut out of a sheet, which was, I mean, fine. But I was breaking tools like crazy, and I had a lot of tool wear.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed with this job. It's just been like normally 4140 is one of my favorite steels to machine, and I was breaking tools, and the finishes on it looked worse than what they do with 1018. Like the finishes on it were absolutely horrendous, even with brand new tools, because I went through a few.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had quite the spectrum to see, and it was weird.
That is interesting. Normally with 4140, do you see a lot of tool wear?
No, not really. Normally 4140 is one of my best stainless, or one of my best steels to run. Now, I will say, every once in a while, I get material like this I have issues with. But like when I get the good stuff in, like it runs like butter, and the machine finishes are like glass.
Interesting. So. Yeah, because I had a very similar experience with a very similar piece of steel. And I don't know, I don't know, I just don't run a lot of 440, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, and I just kind of went through it and just replaced a lot of tools.
So I will say this, the 4140 that I have that runs really good, when it's in bar form, there's no mill scale anywhere. It looks like a shiny piece of material. And all the 4140 that I've run that runs like crap, it looks like it's a hot rolled piece of material just in a 4140 variant. Which is ironic because it's the inverse for stainless. Like the hot rolled stainless, it looks like crap, but it machines much nicer than the cold drawn stainless that has a nicer bar look, but it seems to have a lot more stresses in the material, and it just warps and does a lot more weird stuff when you're machining it. So it's almost the inverse of stainless when comparing them.
Interesting.
So I don't know what's up with that, but driving me up a wall.
I did a fun job the other day. I made 5-axis parts on my 3-axis.
Oh, that is a fun job.
If you look at the part, and just kind of a glance, you're like, oh, that's a pretty simple part. You could probably just do that with 2 ops. But when you really dug into the part, there was like sharp corners that you had to hit from different directions. And these parts that, like, if they allowed rounded corners in the corners, they could have been 2-op parts. But they became like 5-op parts. And so I had to hit them from a bunch of different directions. And I did it with collet blocks. And I kind of faked having a positional 5-axis with collet blocks. And in the first operation, I machined a reference feature. I was able to hit 3 sides of that. And then I just kind of rotated the part so that in every other operation, I could go back and probe that reference feature.
Gotcha.
And like, it took me a little while to get the first one good. Like, basically what I learned is, even though the part was plus or minus 5, like if that reference feature and like the next couple features were more than like plus or minus 1, it snowballed all the way down the part.
Yeah.
But once I got that dialed in, there were 9 different parts. They were all using the same process. Kind of all variations on the same thing. It kind of looked like a finger off to the side or something like that.
Gotcha.
But that ended up being a really good job for me. I
learned a lot.
I learned a lot, and it was profitable. That was the beryllium copper job.
Gotcha.
I think I started that job at like 10 a.m. and I finished it at 6 a.m. the next day.
Oh, man.
But even with that, I was still hundreds of dollars an hour for that job, which was
so you like worked all night?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my goodness.
Then I went to bed, and then I woke up, and there was on the same job some other parts that were like a different part family that were super easy, and so I knocked those out, finished up inspection paperwork, and shipped them the next day. But
yeah,
but I got them done.
That's good. I guess I probably need to talk a little bit about my Europe trip at some point.
Probably.
I was just thinking about that. Do you have any questions before I go in and just start like going crazy on it?
I mean, there's the one thing that I know that we still need to talk about, or the two things.
Okay. What you got?
Well, you've made some purchases.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we can go on that real quick, and then we'll come back to the Europe thing.
Start with new machine update.
Yeah. So, gosh, it was supposed to come tomorrow, and because of the hurricane, it's in port and in city, but the port is backed up because of a hurricane, and now it's a week out. And
Eh.
I desperately need that machine.
You need two of that machine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, background on what's been happening since I got back from Europe. I'll throw a dollar figure on it, but basically we have $75,000 worth of POs. At least. So that's just counting everything over a certain dollar amount. And so like all the small odd job stuff that was not factored into it. So we're over 75K in just work that needs to get done. And basically I have enough work. I have enough work to keep that Haas busy for the next maybe 2.5 months.
Wow.
And then I have enough work to keep the Doosan busy for at least a month. And then I might be getting more work for the lathe that'll have enough work to keep it busy for 2 to 3 weeks. So basically, every machine in my shop is going to be busy, and I might be jumping over to JBU, where I teach, to borrow their machine to run a few parts over there, too. And what really kind of threw this all, like, and made it super crazy for us right now, and it got so bad that me and Weston were basically just sitting in our offices laughing our heads off because we couldn't cry.
I mean, you could,
but
no one here would judge you.
Yeah. The crazy thing is almost all of these POs were basically confirmed today. To put an idea of how crazy it is. Like, it's all work that we've been working on, and basically it all hit at the same time, and we actually got confirmation on everything today. And so, like, I think Weston confirmed like 8 or 9 POs today that all totaled up to close to that. And so and what's funny is I got earlier this week, I think it was on Monday, that run of 400 parts that we did. We got confirmation that they wanted 1,000, and then we bid it out. We sent them the proposal. I actually ordered material before I got a PO because the time frame, they wanted them all by August 23rd, 1,000 parts by August 23rd, and it was going to end up being 15-hour days, 6 days a week to get all 1,000 parts done. And basically my Haas machine would be unusable for anything else, which really messes up other aspects of it. But I was going to have to find a way to make it work. And we were going to have the Doosan do a bunch of stuff. And then he called me today and he's like, "Hey, I got good news, bad news." I was like, "Oh, what you got?" And he's like, "Let's change that order from 1,000 to 2,000. I was like, "Oh, you suck." And he's like, but the good news is, he's like, we could do them in batches of 280, and you don't have to have you don't have to have 1,000 done by the 23rd. We just need to get them in batches of 280 so we can get them sent off to the anodizer. I was like, oh, okay. So basically, that got it down to where my Haas is going to be busy 4 days a week on those parts, and then I'll have 1 day, 2 days if I work Sunday, to use the 5-axis for other stuff. And then I'll have the other machine.
You're a 1 mil shop right now, right?
1 mil, 1 lathe, about to go up to 2 mils, 1 lathe.
Yeah. So you'll double in capacity here in 2 weeks.
Next week, hopefully. So, but then we got to get it all set up and running, which is going to take a little bit, I'm sure. But
that's why I said 2 weeks.
Yeah, it'll be here, and then it'll be. We've got we're gonna have, I think, 10 or 15 tool holders for it. So whatever we get set up, it'll basically we'll be tearing it down and setting up tool holders every time for a while. And it's just gonna be a lot of work, a lot of time. But I'm glad we didn't wait till IMTS, because we would be completely hosed if we had waited till IMTS at this point. And what's scary is we got down to less than $5,000 in our net 30.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like and that was right before I left for my trip to Europe. And so like we were getting stressed out of our mind. Like, did we make the right decision? Like, I know there's a lot of the stuff that could happen, but should we have held off? And, there's all those doubts and things. And then I get back and it just blows up. So, and I've got people, my phone's been ringing constantly from people wanting quotes on stuff, to the point where I've had a couple people that have called me today. They're like, hey, can you, we got your number from so-and-so, and, we got this little project, a couple parts here and there. And I was just like, nope, sorry, I can't. I tried to send one of them your way, but they said that, like, they're like, well, what's he got? And he's like, well, he's got a little office mill. The parts were like a 5x5 by like an inch thick. And they were like, nah. They're like, we're just going to go a different route. And I was like, okay, well, because you were the only one that I could think of that to send them to. But they ended up going a different route. So
They weren't the robot company, were they?
No, I've never met these people.
Okay.
I have no idea who these people are.
Because I got a RFQ kind of out of the blue from a robot company, which I should probably actually follow up with them.
It could be. I don't know if I actually gave them your contact info or not, but I know I talked to them and I gave them your name and I talked about our podcast. They heard about me through something else, and I was like, oh yeah, I do a podcast. And I said, my co-host is the only other person I can think of. So go talk to them.
Oh, thank you. I really need another spindle.
So, but anyways, it's been crazy, and we are extremely blessed, and IMTS is going to be awesome, because I got to figure out my next step. I went from, am I going to be able to afford this machine, to I might need another one.
Yes. So can you fit another one? Is this going to force you to a new shop?
No, we can fit 2, maybe 3 more machines.
Oh, okay. That's not what you were saying a couple weeks ago.
It depends on how big the machines are. So
fair.
I could only fit one more Doosan like of this size, but I could fit, a couple brothers, or, something of that size really easy. I mean, I could probably fit 4 or 5 brothers in there. It'd get tight, but I could do it. But it all depends on what work comes in. I know I'm going to probably end up wanting a dedicated 5-axis if this keeps up, because I can't have that one 5-axis be the bottleneck. And so I'm going to end up needing something dedicated if things continue. But by the same token, I really need a CMM as well, because some of my customers basically require a CMM, and right now I'm getting that waived, like that requirement waived, but they're like, we really want this. So if this work continues, I'm going to have to invest in a CMM.
Could a CMM go in the office side to not take up any machine space?
Yeah, I've got a spot for it already. So we've got a clean room, and I built the clean room. I designed the clean room with the idea of a CMM going in there at some point.
A clean room, or just a room that's not dirty?
A clean room. Like, it's going to be separately AC'd, and it's going to be completely. It's right next to my office, so it's on the other side of the wall. It's a completely separate, closed off room, just for inspection and cleaning. Like, I knew that was going to become something that we were going to need at some point, so I added that from the get-go. And worst case scenario, it was going to be like an extra space, but it's going to become inspection. So we basically, whenever I designed the shop, I tried to put as much thought into getting the most out of it as efficiently as possible. And so far, it's been paying dividends in that respect. So
how long do you think until you're going to outgrow this shop? Because at
I
this rate,
was
it's going to be like next year. Not a joke. Like, really.
yeah. I would like it to last me at least 5 years.
It's not going to last you 5 years unless you magically create more space.
If I can get automation, two of these major jobs that I'm working on, if I had automation on there, I could put them into the evenings and have those machines during the day. Now, I know everyone's going to be screaming at their whatever device they're watching or listening to this on, going, "It's not that easy." But that would be, if I could do something like that. And these are the types of jobs that, if you're running 1,000, 2,000 parts on a regular basis, that is definitely something I can set up automation wise and get, be able to set it up and let it run all night, and then come in the morning and run normal job shop stuff on them. Because basically right now I have two different customers I'm serving. I'm serving customers that are high mix, low volume, where their highest production parts are, maybe 20 of one part. And then I'm getting into the environment where, they're ordering 4,000 parts, 2,000 parts, 1,000 parts at a time on a somewhat regular basis. And then that's the kind of stuff that I can push off, hopefully, to automation off hours. At least that's the goal.
Are these parts small enough that you can make them on a mini mill?
Oh, yeah.
Because Haas has some deals right now with mini mill plus automation for like $70K.
Yes, but they need a 5-axis.
Oh.
So,
yeah, and that automatically makes you like $110K before automation.
Yeah. And so at that point, like a UMC 350 would be an awesome machine. The other one I was looking at was the Brother Speedio 5U or U5.
U500.
No, is it 500? U500?
Yes.
Okay. That one.
Those are
that
cool.
One's
super cool.
That's a super cool machine. It's super compact. It's more compact than the 350, I believe.
Yes.
And it can do a bigger part. So and holds more tools.
Yeah. That U500 is the top of my machine wish list right now.
Yeah. And so yeah.
I'll need another spindle to work up to being able to afford that spindle, but top of my machine wish list. I have it on good authority that Haas is releasing a new small UMC at IMTS. There have been pictures leaked of a machine, of a small 5-axis Haas machine that had it was like a paper, like a printed paper taped to it that said UMC 400.
Yep.
And it looks like a good implementation of the UMC 350, basically, like built from the ground up to be a 5-axis, not like a cannibalized DT machine.
Yeah. With a true side mount tool changer, which is, I think, the main thing it was missing. So,
did they have an? It has a side mount tool changer.
Well, I mean, let me rephrase that. It does have a side mount tool changer. It's the DT side mount tool changer that's limited to like 20 or 18 tools.
Yeah. Okay.
This one,
small side mount.
Yeah, it's basically an umbrella sized side mount.
Yeah.
Versus the new one, it's going to be probably 30 tools at least. And then it probably will be able to be, I don't know for sure, but it might be able to be optioned up to like 50 or more at some point.
I was really like, there is a UMC 350 that has been on the Haas website for like 6 months that is been marked down to like 89K.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really tempting. I don't think it's the smart decision for me right now. Like I should either, like I need a good 3-axis spindle, I think, before I go to 5-axis. or some other like interim leap between 3X or where I am now in a nicer machine. But man, that like right now, the only option for 5-axis other than something used below 100K is the Pocket NC. And like, it's just a little baby machine.
So a good rule of thumb that we have used for deciding when to pull the trigger on the next level is hitting if we can hit the month or the weekly or monthly goal that we would need to go up to that next level of machine, or if we can hit a weekly goal that would equal what we need to make payments on the next machine, and if we can hit that weekly goal, what was it, 4 or 5 times in 6 months, then that means that if we go up to that machine, there's a good chance that work is going to come to fill it and that will grow to the next level.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel like my math gets thrown off a little bit because like basically I'm surviving off one crappy spindle that desperately needs to be fixed. But I can do that because my overhead is so low. So I don't need to make very much money. And so I can do it without a lot of machine. But as soon as I add another machine payment, then I suddenly have to, make reasonable amounts of money.
If you want to, a good goal for you then that I would recommend is get enough money for that down payment. Yeah. And set that as a goal to be able to, if you can build up enough money and set it aside and prove to yourself, one, that you can make that much extra money, even with what you have. And two, if you have enough to afford the down payment because you did pushed hard like that, then those 2 steps alone will make a very compelling argument for going to that next level up.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's hopefully some things happening in the background right now that may make this stuff a whole lot easier. Which I'm not going to talk about them until they have landed in my lap, but there's the potential for some kind of serious capacity opening up over here. And I think that will very quickly kind of show where things are going. Like if I get that extra capacity and like I'm suddenly making double or triple, then it's like, oh yeah, having a 5-axis on my floor is going to open up a lot more capacity.
Yeah.
I would probably, I don't know. Should I get rid of my office mill if I was looking at let's say a second machine? Like let's say that a spindle showed up on my floor and was up and running. Would you then get rid of the office mill to bring in something like a UMC 350 or even like a mini mill or VF or whatever?
If you got rid of it, I would definitely replace it because you've already made the mistake. You've already made the mistake of getting a new machine and selling the old one
too soon.
And honestly, for us, I say that we went from the Tormach to the Haas, and then we basically never touched the Tormach again. And that was a big enough jump that we didn't need 2 spindles.
Let me reword my question a little bit. So would you go from 2 spindles to 3 spindles and keeping the office mill around? Keep in mind the office mill is very cheap. My payments are like $300 a month, and that's going to end within like a year. Or would you go just sell that off and then have a new shiny spindle plus the other spindle for a total of 2 spindles?
So I would say if I was to decrease the amount of spindles, I would go new or, less than 5 years old. Basically, you can't have the maintenance problems you've been having and decrease your spindle count.
Yeah. So in all scenarios here, I'm having at least 2 spindles.
Yes. And it makes me nervous only having one spindle right now, especially with how the work is blowing up right now. I need another spindle ASAP. So, and I didn't think I was going to be buying another machine this quick. Honestly, I thought it was going to be end of the year before I even considered buying another machine.
The first Doosan, you mean, or whatever's next? Okay. Yeah, no, you should have bought 2 Doosons.
So I can't afford 2 Doosons yet. We'll see if things continue at their current rate. And honestly, I would be far more interested in buying some form of automation before buying another machine and trying to maximize these machines until there's not enough hours in the day and I actually need another one. Like, because that'll also offset getting an employee. Because if I keep adding spindles, eventually I'm going to have to start adding employees, and I'm not against adding employees, for the record, but I would much rather add a robot and offset the cost of an employee and a machine, both. Get more capacity and not have to hire an employee. I feel like, and it's cheaper than getting a new machine. So like when you add all those 3 factors up, automation makes the most sense for me as my next step after this. So, because it's like a 3-in-1.
Would you consider a horizontal for your kind of work?
I actually have been. I have been. So, honestly, if things continue the way they're going, I could see selling both of these machines that I currently have and putting in a dedicated 5-axis and a dedicated horizontal. I could see that replacing some things. But the only reason I would be worried about that is how flexible would a horizontal be compared to a vertical in terms of like job shop stuff. Like I know it's basically like I'd be basically getting rid of my large table work and go down to basically having like a bunch of highly productive VF2s. You know, because each side of a pallet is basically a VF2. So basically I'd have to limit my part size to that, which I'm not against.
With the way that you're going, I would not be surprised if you keep all of your current machines and then also add a horizontal.
Yeah.
And a 5-axis.
The problem is I can't fit a horizontal in this shop with what I'm trying to do.
I think you're going to be moving out of this shop soon.
I don't know about how soon that would be.
I mean, yeah, it's not going to be in the next 30 days, but like,
yeah,
unless you start to run out of customers in your area, like you're just going to be growing more like this.
Here's the thing. I'm growing in customers, but none of them are in the area.
Oh, really?
No.
Are they there's in the state or
just in the US?
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I have people that are finding us more and more just throughout. And honestly, I gotta thank the podcast because most of the people that are finding me in some way links back to the podcast.
Interesting.
So like
not directly listeners though?
Not necessarily directly listeners, but like, they had, a listener was a buddy with a guy who worked at a company that, needed some parts.
Yeah.
And, like everyone that I talked to has never heard of the podcast.
Interesting.
But like through this weird snake chain, someone in that link heard the podcast or has listened to the podcast and has told someone else. And eventually that chain works its way back to me. And so it could be the longest, thinnest links, but it somehow connects and I get a phone call.
Interesting. This just goes to show that like attributing sales and marketing is really, really hard.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people, I hope we provide benefit to our listeners. Like, I hope we are adding values to those that listen. the amount of feedback that I get through Instagram and other sources that I do connect to listeners has been very positive, and they all really like it. But I'm sure that's just a small sampling. But I will say, as someone who produces this content, having these connections is kind of like a pipe dream that I don't know if you hope for, but there was one of the pipe dreams I hoped for this podcast was like, I wanted to meet people in the industry and I wanted to gain connections. And if some of those led to business opportunities, that was going to be awesome. I initially wanted it for just the connections to be able to poke people like Dylan. Like the amount of times that I like being able to like poke Dylan and be like, hey, I have this problem. Can you help me? So like, that's the stuff that I was really excited for, but it was kind of a pipe dream of like, oh, maybe this will lead to some extra work at some point. And it seems like here recently it's been exploding. And I can't attribute all of that to the podcast, but there is definitely some potential major customers that have come through that podcast because of weird connections. So for that, I'm extremely grateful.
Speaking of weird connections, we have a Patreon.
Ooh.
And we have many members of our Patreon who we very much appreciate. Those members include, at our $25 a month tier, Trey from Vestal Machining, Guy L, Eric H, and on the $10 a month tier, we have Alex B, Scott from Design the Everything, Jamie from JSpec Engineering, Chris from Zagic Precision, EJ from Nocturnal Welding, Simon V, Chris at ThoughtBomb Design, and as ever, Jake Brownson. Oh, and new member, YZFXXT? Oh, excuse me, YZFXTX.
That sounds like a four-wheeler or ATV.
Yeah. Your name is something, but we still really appreciate you. I'm sure it means something that we just don't get. Like maybe it's a radio term or a, what do they call it? Not a handle.
Like the YZ and all that stuff, that sounds like a Yamaha.
Yeah.
Either something, a Yamaha something. So,
but thank you, YZFXTX. We appreciate you.
I'm going to look that up.
I hope I didn't write that down wrong. All of our Patreons get early access to all of our shows when my internet works. Oh, that was a whole thing that I didn't talk about. And that threw me off. Man, I made a spreadsheet so I was able to read the names without screwing up the Patreon thing, but now I am screwing up the Patreon thing. They get early access to episodes. If you are $10 a month or more, you get your name read out on the podcast. If you're $25 or more, you get to record an awkward goodbye. A lot of people reached out to me from the Patreon over the last 2 weeks, but I literally had a week where my internet basically did not work. And then I was gone for 5 days plus getting ready and then recovering from the trip for a day. So I'm really, really, really sorry, Patreons. I was going to record an episode with you guys while Harrison was gone, but my internet wasn't working and I feel bad and I've been ignoring you and you guys have been supporting us and I'm sorry. We'll work something out this week.
So I just did a little Google foo and YZX is the Yamaha side-by-side.
Interesting. Except it's YZFXTX.
Yeah, but it's still YZF is the first three, right?
Okay.
YZF.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah. But it's split up into 3 sets of 2 letters.
Oh, okay. Maybe not. Wishful thinking.
Man, I made this new spreadsheet so I could make that pitch all smooth, and then I messed it up. Apparently, I need to finish the script on my spreadsheet below the list of Patreons. And then we'll have that down after only 90 episodes.
Yeah. I got one more shop update thing to talk about, and then I'll go into my Europe trip a little bit.
Okay. I want to talk about not having internet.
You want to talk about not having internet? Do you want to go first?
Sure. So before my trip up to Tormach, I realized that I did not have enough storage space to record all the videos that I needed on SD cards. And the laptop I was bringing was my little Surface tablet, which I love, but it only has 128 gigs on the hard drive, which is nothing. almost all of that goes to Windows, and that used to never be a problem because I had Google Drive. But when I sold off Design the Everything, the Google Drive went with it. And so looking at this trip, I was like, okay, I'm going to need more storage space. And so I decided to go back to Google Drive. It was just too useful to not have. And with that, I had to upload all of my files to, well, I didn't have to, but the whole point of the Google Drive is to have access to my files. So I uploaded all of my files to Google Drives. But, you know, I kind of do this whole video production and YouTube stuff. And even though I delete a lot of my videos, I still had, it was like 1.8 terabytes of stuff that I had to upload. And I uploaded it. And my ISP didn't say anything. I technically, on the plan I have unlimited data from Comcast. Mm-hmm. But somehow, magically, they cut us back to dial-up speeds.
Oh.
And actually, it was probably DSL speeds. It was like 3 down and like 0.1 up.
Interesting.
And I think in the fine print, there's not technically a data cap where they charge you more, but they throttle you to death.
Gotcha.
And so my internet basically just stopped working. Like Fusion could still connect and upload and download files, which was nice. But trying to do anything heavier than that was just out of the question. And then the billing cycle struck, and then the internet magically fixed itself. So thanks, Comcast.
Yeah. Unlimited data until you're not priority, and then screw you.
Yeah, unlimited data until you use too much unlimited data. Then it's still slowly unlimited, but slow.
Yeah. Then you can use as much data at 3 megabytes as you want, or less. So my last shop update thing, we're going Lang. So we're going Lang quick change, and
96 or 52 or whatever millimeter.
Both.
Ooh, you got the combo plates.
We got the combo plate. But, and this is something that I just figured out at the very end of the day. So we're going to get that for the 5-axis.
Uh-huh.
And we wanted to get a Lang plate for the 4th axis on the new machine.
Uh-huh.
But we still wanted to use the through bore.
Okay.
And we talked to Lang, and they have made a custom Lang plate with a through bore option. Yeah. So
that's so cool.
And so he's like, yeah, we've done it like once or twice before, the guy that I talked to. And so he sent over a print of what they've done in the past. And he said, this should be pretty close. He said, we can modify it to make it work on yours, but is that kind of what you're looking for? And so the difference is normally you can't do a center bore because there's one bolt. And when you close that one bolt, it does all 4 studs. Well, to do the center bore, they drill out the other side. And so you have 2 bolts you have to turn to lock down a pallet instead of 1.
Interesting.
But you get a through bore as a, you know, the ability to do that. So like whenever we're doing shaft work, we'll be able to keep, basically, I think we can get the exact size hole that is the through hole size for our 4th axis. So anything that we could go through the 4th axis, we can still go through it, and we can keep that plate on there all the time.
Oh, that's super cool. I never even considered that.
So yeah. So that was the goal. And that one's also going to be a combo 90 and 52, I believe.
Okay. And having that 52 millimeter doesn't reduce your through bore size too much?
No, because our through bore size is only 42 millimeters. And so I think it's going to be 52. So I think it's going to be fine.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. So like I've never heard of anyone doing that.
No.
And so I was like, Weston, just like send him that guy a question about that, because they're already going to be making a custom bolt hole pattern for the one that's going to mount to the 5-axis on our Haas. Because none of their standard bolt hole ones line up, and I didn't want to machine my own. Because apparently those are hardened to something like 40 or to like 55 Rockwell or higher. Okay. And so I was like, I could do this, but I think they're only charging us like $300 to drill the holes. And I was just like, go for it. Like, I don't want to mess with it
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. One mistake and suddenly you're
Yeah.
way over
It's
the
like,
$300.
yeah. So it's like, I don't want to risk screwing it up and drilling into something I shouldn't. So you go for it, basically. And so we're getting that, and I'm getting quoted. He just sent over the prints, so I'm going to get quoted a 5-axis or not a quick change plate for our 4th axis.
Okay.
On the new machine, and then that'll allow me to go between the 5-axis and the 4-axis, and to do that cool thing that I'm seeing on Instagram everywhere, where you put a vise on a 90-degree plate and mount it to your 4th. So, or hold some of the production stuff that I'm going to be moving over to the new machine if we keep getting this work. Is I have a part that's it's a 3-op part, but I can take it down to 2 ops if I put it on the 4th axis. And basically it's, you got top, bottom, and then there's a hole in the side. And so if I can put that on the 4th, I can rotate it down and put that hole in to where I can go down to 2 ops. And if I design my fixture right, and if I can have parts all the way around the perimeter, where I can have op 1s on one face, op 2s on the other, op 1s, op 2s. So I can have it all the way around where I can get, hopefully, multiple parts and load and go with it. So
are you putting any not fixture plates, but any of the Lang plates like just flat on the bed of your mills, or are all of them on rotaries?
Right now they're all on rotaries, but eventually we might put them down on the tables. Okay. So we're going to start with the rotaries, and we're going to go from there, and eventually we might start putting them on the tables. But that basically we built some of the jobs that we're doing. We built the Lang stuff into the price, and so that was basically a way to well, not all of it, but we basically built in on the 1,000-piece run. I built in enough to cover like 50 to 75% of the Lang stuff, and then they doubled the order at the same price. So.
Oh, okay.
So basically it's fully covered now.
Yeah, you get an extra free Lang. Yeah.
So it's basically covered and then a little extra. So, and that's when we started looking at adding in the one for the 4th.
Nice.
So. But okay, so that was basically everything shop-wise. Did you have anything else before I go into my Euro trip?
No.
Long, awkward pause, and it's not even the end of the podcast. Without going too crazy, because our time's already getting pretty long, I want to start off by anyone who's still listening that was over in Europe and wanted to meet up with me and apologize. This trip felt more like a job because of how busy we were. And with the family and basically running from place to place to place, I didn't have any time to catch my breath. We ended up going, and I've said this enough times that I think I got it straight in my head. We started in the Netherlands, then Germany, then Switzerland, and then Italy. And we went to Amsterdam, Cologne, Heidelberg, Lucerne, and Venice.
You speed ran Europe.
Yes, basically. And it was basically, the place we were at the longest was Venice, and that was 3 days. And in Lucerne, we did a top of Europe trip where we basically went up almost 12,000 feet up in the mountains. And that was a lot of fun. But some of the highlights from my trip, because I'm just going to hit some of the highlights, was in Amsterdam, we went to some windmills. And so I got to see some old windmills that were running. And as the engineering mechanical side of my brain, that was probably my favorite part of the trip.
Really?
Yeah, because it was so cool seeing the ingenuity of people who have been, it was like 16 or 1700s when they started making these things, and just seeing like all the gears and everything working basically off of wind power. It was just so cool. I could have spent all day there and just looked at how all that stuff worked. Um, and it was so much fun. And then, so that was probably the best thing in Amsterdam for me. We did look at a lot of other stuff. We looked at how they made the wooden shoes, the clogs,
Okay.
and a cheese factory, and that was pretty cool. In Cologne, we went to a cathedral. They had a big cathedral there. Don't ask me the name of it because I couldn't remember. But we climbed up one of the towers, and it was something like 26 stories, like over 600 steps.
Uh-huh.
And I am way out of shape for that. My asthmatic wife was doing better than I was. And my youngest brother was a freaking mountain goat running up and down that stupid thing. But it was a lot of fun. It was really high up. And once again, super cool that the engineering of a building of that age built when it was to that elevation. Like when we got up to the top, we could see all over Cologne. Like I don't think there was anything that was really taller that I could see or that comes to mind than that cathedral. It was so cool. And the inside, like, I don't know about you, but like anytime I've like watched movies or something and you like see the big cathedrals when you walk in, like going into that cathedral and looking up at how big and massive it was, like took my breath away. It was phenomenal. So that was in Cologne. In Heidelberg, they had a castle. So we hiked around, and I actually met a friend of mine who lived in the US and then moved to Germany. And so I got to meet his I had met his wife before. She had come to America a couple times, but I got to meet his son. And he was like 5 years old at this point. Super cute. Adorable little kid. But they took us out on a little hike, and it ended up at the castle there.
Uh-huh.
And it was kind of cool because one of the towers of the castle it was a tower where they kept the gunpowder. And then I don't remember if it was sabotage or a raid or what, but an enemy force came and attacked the castle and got a fire arrow or something into that and basically blew off the tower. And so there's this massive section of tower that's still all intact. It's like someone took the tower and went with a knife and sliced it. And it's just down there laying on the ground, standing up. It is the coolest thing. And it looks, I don't know if it actually is, but from the appearance of it, it all looks like it's still charred and black from the gunpowder after all this time. So that was super cool. And we also, one thing I'm going to just mention, the food pretty much everywhere was amazing. So anyways, that's what we did in Heidelberg. In Lucerne, everything was freaking expensive. So like that was by far the most expensive place we went to. But I did end up finding it was just probably the only thing that I really bought on the whole trip. I've got a lot of friends that are really big knife collectors, and they had a Damascus Swiss Army knife. And so I picked up one of those just as like a little souvenir, and that thing's sweet. I don't know if I have it in here. I'll have to go see if I can find it again because I don't remember if I stuck it in here, if it's in the other room, but super cool knife. But then the other thing we did was we went up into the Swiss Alps and up to the top of Europe trip. And our guide, he was from Taiwan, I believe. And he was short and he was hilarious. So there was in our group, there was a girl by the name of Amy, and she was on a business trip, and she had one day that she could like go do something, and this is what she did. And our guide, who couldn't remember anyone's name, he remembered Amy's name, and so he was like, or no, it wasn't Amy, it was Amanda. So he's like, Amanda, and he was calling her everywhere. And this guy was hilarious, because like you'd be sitting there with your phone you'd be holding your phone trying to take photos of stuff, and he'd be go, "I take better picture," and he'd grab it out of your hand, and he'd go up, and he's taking photos of things, and he's having people pose. Like, we get up to the top of Lucerne, or to the top of the mountain, the top of Europe trip, and we're up at the very top, and he's like, stand back, and he's like pushing people away. He's like, stand back. He's like, group one, here. He's taking photos, and he was just, he was one of the best tours I've ever been on, and the guy was hilarious. I could talk about him for a while, but I won't. It was so much fun. We got really close with everyone in that group after that. And so that was in Lucerne. And then the last place was Venice. And honestly, Venice was probably and I don't know if it was because we were getting tired or what, but Venice, there wasn't really anything that stood out other than like the canals and riding around on the boats and stuff like that. It was a cool place, but it's also where everyone I met on the whole trip, super kind, super cheerful, and I don't expect that everywhere. But all of the worst interactions I had with people was in Venice, and it wasn't from locals; it was from other Europeans that were on vacation there, is what I'm guessing. So basically, I'll give you the short version. We had one that was at a restaurant who basically came over and told us off for being rude tourists in Europe. And at first they thought we were Canadian, but but then we were like, no, we're American. He's like, oh, even worse. And so like he was just very rude, but he was calling us rude. And it was a weird thing. I think it's just because we were just the stereotypical loud Americans. And so, even though I don't feel like we were being that bad, but whatever. It's a different culture. I understand that. The second one, on the other hand, we had been running around all day and we were exhausted, and my brother was sick. So we went to go pick up some medicine at a local supermarket or of some kind. And the way it is in Venice, you have all the walkways you can go down, and so the shop fronts are really tiny. And so this marketplace, you had a very narrow entrance in, and then on the back side it opened up into like a regular shopping place. And where the registers were, everything was really tight, and there was a really long line all the way through the store. And I had a guy that was trying to push through the line, and he was asking, "Is this the line?" And no one was responding. And so he was trying to push past us, and so he pushed past us, and I was like, "Hey, by the way, this is the line." And he had pushed past us by this point, and he turned around, and he basically cussed me out right then and there. And my wife, who is an introvert, she's freaking out, trying to figure out what's going on. The guy's like, "I don't need you telling me this, that, and the other." And he's like, "My son's in this line, and I'm looking for him." I'm like, "Hey, if your son's here," like, I didn't know. I thought you were asking where the line was. And so I was like, "If your son's up there, go to your son." And he's like, "I don't need you telling what you have to do. You need to keep your blankety blank trap shut." And like, I mean, all I said was, "This is where the line is." And that, I mean, the whole store, everyone's turning and looking at us, trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, and like, there was a security guard that was standing there, and he's like twitching and trying to figure out what's going on. And when that guy finally walks off, he's looking at me. He's like, "What did you do?" It's like, I just told him this is the line. And so anyways, it was weird. But on the flight back, I had a lady who was actually a local to Venice that was a stewardess, and the whole trip back, and she was in her mid 50s, late 50s, and the whole trip back she was flirting with me, like, with my wife sitting right there. And it was hilarious because she's just like, "I'm going to take you home with me. You're going to be mine." And like, the other stewardess is sitting there like, "You're married. Leave him alone." She's like, "I want him." And then like, she's like looking over at my wife, and she's like, "You better hold on to him because he's going to disappear with me if you're not careful." And it was just the whole flight. It was hilarious. But She was a funny lady. And whenever we were getting off the plane, she came over and gave us a big hug before we got off. My wife, who's an introvert, she about passed out at that point too. So it was funny. But anyways, no, the whole trip was awesome. But I didn't realize how tired I was until Saturday. Like I said, that's when the jet lag really hit. And I think we walked an average of like 8 miles a day all over the place. And so I feel like I lost 10 pounds. So that's just the short version of it. There's a lot of little individual stories. I feel like everywhere we went, I made a lot of friends with people that were over there. Like on the trip up into the mountain, we met people from all over the world, and they were all great. In Amsterdam, whenever we were walking around on some of the tours, there was a guy that was German that we started hanging out with, and he kind of joined our group, and we had a bunch of fun with him. So I would say like 99.9% of all the interactions I had with everyone over there was awesome. I just had 1 or 2 bad apples that just really, I don't know what we did, but just like it just stuck in my brain as like, what's going on? So,
speaking of getting stuck in your brain, I forgot to make an announcement. IMTS Monday the 9th, 2 p.m. At the Tormach booth. We are having a meetup. Everybody is welcome. I guess you have to have a past IMTS to come in, but IMTS 2 p.m. Tormach booth. They'll give us some sort of refreshments, coffee, water, something, and bring a part. So if you make parts that you are able to conveniently carry around IMTS, bring a part with you, show it off. It's a good way of starting conversations with machinists.
I need to ask on one of the parts that I'm making the customer if I can bring it, because it is a cool part. Because I have a couple extra laying around. If not, I'm going to have to pick a different part. But there's one part that I really want to bring because I like it. It turned out really good. Nice. And I have extra.
Oh, and I never told you this, Harrison, but we have a podcast booth booked at IMTS. Courtesy of the guys at Toolpath Labs, toolpath.com. They are providing us with a podcast booth so we can record our first ever live show.
Oh, well,
not
goodness.
Live show, but us two together in one room. It'll still be recorded and not posted live, but
yeah, that'll be fun. It's going to be so good. Like, I've been looking forward to IMTS so much, especially with how much things have been blowing up here recently. I feel like I want to go to, at first I want to go to IMTS because, I'm looking at getting a new machine, and now I got a new machine coming. And then I wanted to go look at it for work holding, and now I'm getting Lang. It's like, I know there's still going to be a lot of stuff to look at there, but every time I'm trying to think of what I want to do there, I end up getting it sooner. So, CMM. I doubt I'm going to get a CMM by then. Oh.
Do the outro.
I know, but I'm enjoying the song. Alright, I guess I can go. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on this episode of Taps and Patience. It's been a blast, and I'm looking forward to IMTS. So, all of you guys that are going to be coming out there, look out for us, because I really want to meet as many of you as I can while I'm there. And yeah, man, I don't know what to do for an outro. I haven't done this in so long. I don't have anything witty to say. This is my awkwardness right now. But anyways, this has been Harrison with Precision Ingenuity signing out with AJ from Audacity Micro.
I sent Tormach that song,
and
they never responded to me. It's very awkward.
No.
I was like, they didn't even acknowledge it, and that makes me sad.